Well, we're so delighted to welcome here in our studio today Alex Schlange. Alex and I met almost, about 6 or 7 weeks ago, and he's my next door neighbor, has a lovely wife and a 16-year-old. And it's like falling in love at first sight. Amazing, amazing, deep person, deep man, great family. And, Alex, I want to welcome you to the studio today and conversations about being bold and conscious. So welcome.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it. These are some of my favorite conversations to have because they're so meaningful and they have impact on people's lives. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure, and since I've gotten to know you so well over these few weeks, I just thought that it would be important for our listeners to have some context, about who you are, and of course they've heard in the intro who you are, but give them a little more context as to what it is that has made you so deep, and why we have these amazing conversations. And I just love for our audience to hear about you, and what it is that's driven you to who you are.
All right. Well, I've always found people to be fascinating. You know, um, I have so many things that I've made up as far as in my conversations that I say, like people are like fingerprints. There are no two that are exactly the same. So that in itself is, I find, absolutely amazing. Yet we have that commonality of being from Earth and being on one planet, and I just find it absolutely fascinating how different everyone looks and speaks, and it's utterly like mind blowing and fascinating. So one of the things, I know it's a little off topic, but one of the things that I've never forgotten, I was probably in my early teens and I picked up a book, and it said something about wisdom. And I think it was my horoscope. I'm a Sagittarius. And in the book, it said, very wise and wisdom seeking and all that. And somehow that really touched me. And I had no really idea what wisdom even was, or, but I never thought that I would be seeking it out my whole life. And I'm so grateful that I read that line. And, I owe it a lot. I don't even know what the book was because it's just one of those things that children do. You see a book and you're like, oh, what's this? Oh, that's my horoscope, you know. And yeah, I read that, and I've been on the pursuit of wisdom and didn't even know what it was. And still to this day, I just love, inspirational things and things that make you think. And especially thinking out of the box, I think is very important. And try to walk your own line and then share the experiences that you've had.
Well, that's amazing. It's certainly not off the topic, because somewhere along the way you were meant to read this horoscope, and the word wisdom and the pursuit of it. I mean, that's this conversation. It's really that's what this is about. So appreciate you saying that. So okay, so you started your career at 13. What got you gravitate towards this career of styling and artistry around hair and looks? I mean, that's a very early age to have that kind of insight.
Yeah, I've always been an artist. I like to paint and draw. I look at the world probably different than most people. A very much a visual person, and I'm originally from Germany, and we moved to the States when I was a really young child. Everyone in my family has done hair, from my great grandparents to my grandparents, my mom, dad, aunts, uncles, cousin. So I really grew up in that business. And in Europe, a lot of times, maybe not so much anymore, but back in the time, you just did what your parents did. You followed their footsteps and their occupations. And I had a really big respect for both my grandparents, and they were just great people, and they made they made it so much fun, and it just looked amazing, and you could see how it changed the people after they were done, and they were smiling and happy, and the whole occupation is just filled with people loving their hair, and it's impactful, and they could come in a bad mood and they leave in a great mood, and that really resonated with me. And so when I was 13, my dad said, "Okay, Alex, it's time. Go get your scissors, get a comb, and I'm going to start teaching you, how to do hair." So in the state, we moved to Texas, and in the state of Texas, you have to be 15 to start beauty school. So I started beauty college when I was 15, while I was still in high school. Um, there were roughly
Mhm.
200 children. So we had classroom one, classroom two. So classroom one was the new people starting. Classroom number two were people that have already had a year under their belt, because it's a 2-year course. And I was the only guy in cosmetology. So I had literally 199 girls in my class, and I was the only guy. And there were definitely
Wow.
some strange things, because the school that I went to was a vocational education campus, and they had air conditioning, um, auto trade, they had metal shop, and it was all geared towards boys and young men. And I was in the classroom with all the girls. There was no men's restroom at the time, and we had to
Mm.
wear uniforms in beauty college, and it was like a white, all white lab coat, white pants, white shoes. So you kind of look ridiculous as a guy. And then if I had to use the restroom, I had to walk across the whole campus to go to auto mechanics to use the guy's restroom. So you can imagine,
Oh my
you know, the teasing and all that stuff. That was probably the worst part, and I had 2 years of that. So, but at the same time, I loved every minute of it. It was a great experience. I
God.
had a wonderful teacher, and
Mhm.
yeah, it was crazy.
Well, that's amazing. So I guess that leads me to our first very basic question. Everything we do is bold conscious something in our work, Trisha, and my work. And this particular podcast is called Bold Conscious Connections. The idea of the podcast is to bring people like yourselves to kind of illuminate a bit about what in your life has caused you to be more bold. So starting at that, with the story you just relayed, and now 40 plus years since that career, almost 40 years. Uh, what what is it for you to be bold? Because you clearly are. That's why you're here. And why is it important in your work today?
Well, I've always been a little bit of a joker. I love to have fun, and I'm a very playful spirit. Even when I was in beauty school, we had to roll perms, and we had these mannequin heads. And the way the stations were set up was one person was on one side, another person was on the other side. And I would roll the perm, and then I would pass the head around to the other side of the mirror. So the teacher was basically grading the same head, and it was one of the things, I guess, how I coped with being the only guy. So I was,
Hmm.
trying to survive through comedy, and it got me pretty far, and it's just carried with me even to adulthood. So after I got my license when I was 16, 16 and a half, I started working for a company. And now my father owned salon. He had salons as well, but I just didn't want to work for my dad, because he just didn't pay me what I really need to be paid in order, to live out there. you know. So I worked for this company in Houston, and it was an Inc. 500 company, and they had roughly about
Hmm.
600 employees. It was a great launch pad for me, and it was the company that really brought in a lot of motivational speakers, and At 17, I
Mm.
didn't even know what that was. I had no clue what a motivational speaker was, nevertheless, motivation. I've always considered myself, self motivated, but it's really amazing when you hear someone speak for the first time that you completely understand what they're saying, and I just absorbed all the
Mm.
information as much as I could. We had weekly meetings, and the owner would come in and have a old cassette recorder and would play some famous motivational speaker, and people would say, he would say, does anyone know who this is? And then I would say something, like off the wall crazy, and everyone would laugh, and of course he didn't find it funny. So you gotta you gotta learn when you can use humor and when you can't. But that really was the start of a whole new direction for me, was these motivational speakers. So I looked for books and tapes, and never thought that I would actually become friends with some of these motivational speakers through my journey and my career and life. It's amazing.
Hmm. So, are you able to mention a couple of examples of those that you encountered in life, and what, I guess that's what you're saying, made you bold, right? To be out there and keep
Yeah,
doing what you're doing with full gut.
well, it you have to be bold when you have 199 girls and you're the only guy, right? The counselors try to
Yeah.
talk me out of taking the class because I was taking the spot away from a female, and they said it's not really geared
Mm.
towards guys. And since I was the only guy, I'm like, no, I really want to do this. It's part of my family. So I think that's really where it started, that I had to stand up for myself, even in high school, that this is what I want to pursue. And then 2 years of the bullying, um, it makes you tough, and you think, like, instead of me being upset or taking offense to it, I went a little deeper, thinking, what is the cause of this? Why are they doing this? What's really behind it? And it's a little deeper even at a young
Mm.
age. So, I've always been an observer, and I try to observe, and my environment, and maybe that's part of the art, the artisan that I am. Um, the As far as motivational stuff, you know, there's little tidbits of information that there could be maybe 10 things and one paragraph, but you might only get one because it
Mm.
pertains to where you are in life. Even though all 10 are great, you kind of pick and choose what works for you and what propels you forward and keeps you on track and makes you happy. And then later in life, all of a sudden, another one pops up. Oh gosh, I remember that. you know and you completely forgot about it, or didn't feel like you needed it, but you realize how much
Mm.
you really did later. you know so it's those things that make you bold. I was always a good student. I was in the top of my class. I was exempt from taking finals. I never missed a day of school. So I never was sick or absent. You know, um, so yeah, it's I think being bold sometimes is a path that people kind of fall into sometimes without even knowing it. And if you want to get from point A to point B, you got to be bold. You got to have some boldness.
Yep. So I was saying that it's always the depth of experiences that teaches you about life. It's mostly the experiences that teach. So it sounds like you had very early on these amazing encounters that could shake people up or shake you up, but somehow you plowed through that to to keep going in life. So it's and you work for another company and then you turned an entrepreneur. Tell us about that decision point, the turning point that you already left your dad because you didn't want to, he wasn't paying you enough. So you clearly
Right.
somewhere you're an entrepreneur at heart. You're a young guy, 17 at the time. What was that shift from, okay, that you work for this, didn't want to work for your dad, went to work for a company, and then you started your own business. At what age was that?
I was 22.
22.
Yes, I opened my first salon at 22 in Houston, Texas. What led me to that, or what gave me the insight to do it, was the fact that this Inc. 500 company that I was working for, in a very short period of time, within less than a year, I was the most requested hairstylist. Um, I was an educator for the company. We launched products, we tested products and launched products, and we did the first American Hair Show in London. So there was an artistic team that you had to try out for. And out of the hundreds of people that tried out, only 6 people were able to make the team. And the judges had no idea who was doing the work. And you could only be on the team for 1 year. I made it 6 years in a row. So I was doing international hair shows for 6 years and became a permanent member of that artistic team because I've made it so many times in a row. So between the management classes, we did public speaking. So I did public speaking classes, classes on fear, and all those things that it really takes to be prepared at a young age to open a business. So a lot of the fears that I had, or that most people would have opening a business, I just didn't have. And I had a lot of confidence in my work, not actually owning a salon, but in my work. And, that made it a little easier for me. So for me, it was time. As you know, sometimes you don't know when a good time is, but I just knew that it was time for me to, you know, advance myself professionally and go to the next level and own my own salon. So we did that. And through the years, I owned it for 15 years. I won an outstanding
Mm.
business achievement from the Houston Commerce, and I had
Mm.
won some awards. I've won a lot of awards. Then my school, excuse me, my school where I went to cosmetology, um, at the vocational education, had me as a guest speaker, and it was for a teachers in service. There were thousands of teachers in the Coliseum, and I was the guest speaker. So it was really amazing that I was able to speak to all the teachers that taught me through my childhood. And my opening line was, you know, thank you, teachers, so much. And I saw all my teachers that taught me through elementary to high school. And I said, you have no idea how long I waited for this moment where you had to sit down and listen to me. And of course, all the teachers loved it and clapped and laughed. And, that's how I started it. But back to
Mm.
the salon and owning the salon was, well, it was time. And I knew it.
Mm.
It
Well,
was,
what I find fascinating, Alex, is that you did not stop. I mean, there were, as you were saying, I remember me being at 18 and 20 and 22 and fairly fearful about, forget about starting a business, but about just being afraid of my bosses or what they would think or judge me to be doing. I mean, and then people work way into their 40s and 50s in corporate jobs, and as I did too. And it actually instills some fear because exactly what you're comfortable doing, but then we also know that all growth comes from discomfort and doing something uncomfortable. But it seems to me that either you had a easy ride and you just didn't even know what to be afraid of. Maybe I'm misunderstanding. I'm sure that's not the case. But did you have any fears and concerns at any point between the ages of 16, 15, and 22. I'm sure you did.
Oh, you know, the list is too long to even mention. As a human being, it's part of life,
Hmm.
right? You have all kinds of crazy things
Hmm.
that happen. Um, you know, I was a cheerleader in high school as well, so that didn't fare very well as well. Because now I'm in an industry that's driven by women, and then I was a high school cheerleader. So even when I left the vocational
Hmm.
education, which was off campus, now I go back to my home campus school, and I was bullied through the whole thing. People always thought I was gay. They really gave me a really hard time, and there were plenty of times where it was extremely depressing and hard. And kids always wanted to fight me. That was the other thing. Was constant bullying, and they were afraid of me. And I guess because I was different. And I had some great friends that owned a martial arts studio. So I started taking martial arts, and I ended up getting a tattoo of a dragon on my arm while I was 15 years old. And that was kind of a safety net for me. I felt like I had to do some things in order for my own protection. And, back then, tattoos weren't really in style. And of course, it freaked everybody
Mm.
out. So now I was even more misunderstood. Like, oh my God, this kid's 15 and has a
Mm.
tattoo. Where is he from? And thank God my dad was cool about it, because my dad asked me, "What do you want
Mm.
for your 15th birthday?" And I said, "A tattoo." And he started laughing. He goes, "Okay." So he took me to the tattoo shop thinking that I would change my mind. And all of a sudden the machine starts and my dad
Mm.
starts screaming, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm getting a tattoo." So of course we both got in
Mm.
trouble when we got home and my mom saw it. So, but for me,
Mm.
it really was about putting a shield up, protection, and having people afraid of me, for my own safety,
Mm.
basically. I did gymnastics as a
Yes.
cheerleader. I could do flips, and I could strike a pose, martial art pose. So, it's probably what saved me and got me through, you know, all the fun making, because people were terrified of me. So,
Oh
and I
my
did
God,
go on to get
that's
my black belt.
hilarious.
Yeah. So, and
Hmm.
I did the same for my son. So I made sure that at 3.5, my
Mm.
son started Taekwondo, and he got his black belt as well. So, it's always a good discipline to
Mhm.
have, to, you know, defend yourself. I've never had
Oh,
to
I
use it.
better be afraid now. I better
No,
be
no,
afraid
no.
of the two of you now.
I'm almost 60, and I've never hit a human being. I've never been in a fight in my life.
I was saying that I was going to ask you later on what would you consider either one big obstacle or maybe a couple of obstacles in your life, we all have them, that you overcame, and then what did you learn from it? So is that one of them that you mentioned, or is there, because I was going to ask you that later on, but go ahead.
Well, yeah, that the peer pressure of how you're perceived is a huge one, for sure.
Hmm.
That you don't fit in the group, right? So I never felt like I fit in,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people have that
Hmm.
initial feeling when they go through life, even as an adult, because you know we only grow on the outside. We still stay children on the inside. And if you think that you're an adult and
Hmm.
you've grown up, you're highly mistaken. You'll always have that child side inside you. Um, so even adults can feel like they don't belong, and it's absolutely ridiculous. It's a hard obstacle to get over, because there's so many conversations that you have with yourself that no one can hear. Only you can hear, and you have to be careful with those conversations, because that will stop you from having an amazing life.
That's so powerful for those of you listening to this. I hope you're taking note, because everyone has a different journey, and you, Alex, are highlighting yours, and it's got to be hard as a youngster to go through what you went through, and we all go through different things in life. But it's the learnings from whatever that taught you to continue to plow. So it's pretty powerful to hear that. And so tied to that is the other question, Alex. Would you be able to just highlight perhaps maybe one or two of your greatest leadership lessons, because clearly you are a leader, and people sort of gravitate to you because you stand out, good or bad are judgments that people make, but leaving that aside, you've stood out throughout your life. So what lessons might you be able to what you can share with others that you've learned that maybe will hold them in good stead?
Um, for me, it's about caring. Not just caring about other people, but caring about
Mm,
yourself. It's important that you have a good relationship with yourself, because if you feel that no one's having a good relationship with you, the most important relationship you can have is with yourself. Care about yourself. Don't worry about what other people say. I made a commitment with myself that I would get up early, and I've been getting up early every single day of my life without an alarm clock. Even when I went to school, my
mm,
parents would always go, Alex, why are you going to bed so early? I would tell them I have a big day tomorrow. And they would just like laugh, going,
mm.
what's wrong with our kid? I didn't like to get in trouble. I was kind of a rule follower, believe it or not. I know I sound like a rebel, but I'm really not. I like to do the right thing. Superman has always been
Hmm.
my favorite superhero because he believes in truth and justice. So I kind of followed that. So he was my first
Hmm.
motivational, which is really funny, Superman. But it's I've always had a great relationship with myself, and I would tell myself great things. As horrible as the world would say things to me, even my own parents, um, I would
Hmm.
just listen to myself. I always wanted to pursue art, and my dad and everybody said you're not good enough. And to this day, I still pursue the art.
Hmm.
So you know,
Hmm.
you you don't want other people to squash your dreams and your fantasies and even the things that you like. Whether you're good or not is irrelevant. It's the fact that you enjoy doing it. And I think it's important that you start looking at yourself. That I heard someone say, in fact, gosh, who was it? I can't even remember who it was, but I like the fact that he said this. He goes, "I'm going to stop dating because it's not working out, and I'm going to start dating myself, and I'm going to see what's going on." And I absolutely love that, because when you think of dating yourself, you have to treat yourself like you would want to be treated if you're going on a date, and you're going to be good to yourself that way. you know so it's it's just one of those things that I absolutely loved. I thought it was great.
Hmm. Well, it's fascinating because I've had the firsthand experience of reciting after you. I am fill in the blank for without you're amazing, you're this, you're that, and those I am words are so powerful. So if we put ourselves down, then you're not taking care of yourself. So that's super powerful, and that's been a great learning for me just in these last few weeks that I've gotten to know you, and I know you practice what you preach. So it's fantastic, really, to see that, and this is another quote from somebody, right? If you're not going to be your best friend, then who is going to be your best friend? um so
Yeah.
it's about these practices for yourself. So that brings me to a question that I was going to ask you earlier, but just as a perfect segue. We say we're bold and conscious leaders. That's our programs typically. So we talked about being bold. Now let's talk about conscious. So you touched on a little bit about what are your practices day to day to be more conscious, which is,
Okay. Well, that's
awakened, self-aware, mindful, all those
yeah.
things.
Well, just like an attractive person, or a beautiful bouquet of flowers, or the aroma of something nice, or beautiful music, right? And that's what you really want to attract to your life as well, is these amazing, beautiful things that we take for granted or that we don't look anymore. Like the old saying, stop to smell the roses. You want to be conscious about that. You
Mm.
really want to make sure that you're not just making coffee because it's a routine. You want to enjoy the experience of making that coffee and smelling it and feeling it with your hands and then tasting it and, thinking to yourself, you know, the pleasure of it, and even the drive
Mm.
to work. I'm lucky enough that I'm not on a freeway, that I get to drive through a beautiful neighborhood, um, the trees, the sky. It's just amazing, and you want to be conscious of that. Be a little more awake to your surroundings. I, I don't know how else to say it, but wake up. I always say the mass
Mm.
majority of people are sleepwalking. They're asleep. They don't want to get up. Um, they hit their alarm clock, the snooze. They wake up cussing, and you really don't want to start your day that way. You want to be conscious of how you're waking up and how you want to start your day and who you want to be that day. There were people always make fun of how I dress sometimes, and I'm even conscious about what I'm wearing because I don't always think of like, well, what am I going to wear today? Because most people go in their closets and they go, I have nothing to wear. What am I going to wear? I don't know what to wear. And I just tell myself, who do I want to be that day? And then I pick the outfit according of who I want to be. So I make a conscious effort of who I want to be that day, and you can be many things, depending on what
Mm.
clients are coming in. I might dress a certain way to present myself a certain way to be someone else, and be playful with it.
Mm.
And it makes the day more enjoyable instead of being a circumstance of the day. You be the
Mhm.
circumstance of the day. You be what you want to be for the day instead of being a victim of the day. And that's fun.
Beautiful. Yeah. That is fun. That's so awesome, and I've seen you in action. So that's waking up early. You said you wake up no matter what at 5 or very early, whatever that is, um,
Yeah.
for you, and then examine this aspect of choosing the day or who you want to be during the day. Are there other practices? I mean, it sounds like that's a lot of determination, discipline that you have incorporated in your life. Are there other things
Well,
that make you more aware and conscious?
well, listening. I'm a really good listener, and I think that's
Hmm.
probably just because of my occupation. Um, I find it very important to listen. Most people, the old saying, God gave you one mouth and two ears, but more or less,
Hmm.
people have lost the art of listening. Um, that's the other thing I think that I love to do because there's so much information and great people, and they can give you insight as long as you're listening and you're open for it. I think listening is probably more important than speaking because a lot of times people don't really have that great things to say. So for me, transformation is more about listening and being open to listening what other people have to say, not always what you're saying. If that makes sense.
Yes, awesome, man. I tell you, so that brings me to, at least we haven't talked much about your work and your day to day. So
Yeah,
there is clearly that application of what you just described right into your work because you're a hairstylist. And I want to
correct.
add the other element of the question here is that you moved across the continent, sorry, the all of the US from west to east, having lived
Yes,
in Houston for, a decade or a
like
decade and a
30
half,
years.
and then
Yeah,
25 years in San Diego, California. So it's and you were sought after. You were the one of the top guys over there on the West Coast, and to make this move and continue what you're describing in connecting with people. What do you attribute your uniqueness and then being able to express it and manifest it every single time, no matter where you lived? It's a great lesson for me, but share with the listeners what it is that, how do you do that? That's amazing.
well, I think it's exactly. for what point I made earlier is be careful what you tell yourself, right? Don't
Mm,
make up any stories, of how bad and how hard and how this and how that. There was none of that. I Of course I miss all my friends and my clients because I was in California for 25 years and had my salon there, and I was booked a year in advance. I stopped taking new clients like 17 years ago. I was extremely
mm,
busy. To leave that and go to another state, you can imagine the amount of stories that one would have in their head. For me, I looked at it like this. I lived there for 25 years. That's a quarter of my life. I want to have a new experience. How do you ever gain wisdom if you can't explore and try something new? And California was going through a really
mhm,
tough time where, we were closed for a year. Uh, People were scared, and I just didn't want to have any part of that narrative. So, my wife and my son, we moved to the East Coast, and we were ready. Nothing against California. I had 25 amazing years there. I love that state. It's
mhm,
beautiful, but that relationship with the state just wasn't working for me anymore. And the timing was good.
mhm,
And these are some of the stories that I was, telling myself, that the relationship with California was not good. It was like being with a beautiful woman, except she was treating me bad. So it wasn't healthy anymore.
mm.
And I had a beautiful home, ocean view home. I had the life that everybody wishes they had. And you know what? I was ready to make a change and start something new and have a new adventure. Again, playful, you know, make it fun. It doesn't have to be this miserable thing. And I had to start completely over, with new clients, getting a job. I've never been to South Carolina in my life. It wasn't even on my bucket list. I, and my wife did the research and she said, let's take a vacation. We came to South Carolina and I was blown away of how beautiful it was, the amazing people. And, sometimes you can surprise yourself where you think that no one's going to, take you in with open arms. And this town and this state has taken us in with open arms. So it's made it that much better. So again, I would say that be careful with the stories that you tell yourself. There are so many different perspectives that you could choose. What are you choosing? Are you choosing like, oh my gosh, poor me, this is dreadful? Or are you choosing, this is going to be the most amazing adventure and I'm going to learn so much from it and I can't wait to get started? And that's the narrative that I chose. And I loved every bit of it. Coming out here, meeting new people, just like Raju. I mean, it's awesome. You'll never feel more alive, and it gets you out of that sleepwalk where every day is the same day. It's the same people. It's the same drive. It's the same. That's where people start falling asleep because every day blends together and it becomes one big day. One year becomes one big day. It's the same thing, and when you make these moves, it's like a rebirth. You can reinvent yourself. You can see things you've never seen before, try new foods, see a new city. It's probably the most you'll be alive.
Oh my God, I've got goosebumps here, Alex, because if those listening just thinking that you know yesterday is gone, tomorrow will be a new day, and then they do the same thing, there is no hope for them to change the narrative and change the past. So the past equals the future, and this is right here is a lesson. Trisha and I talk about, you know be very clear about what it is you want to do, and more importantly, why is it that you want to do something. And the all the possibilities are in that moment today, that if you want to make a change, that's where the moment is for you to change your future. So it's so powerful to hear the story that you know people don't make the move. I don't mean people should just move to another state like you did, but it's whatever it is. Like here you are manifesting again in this town, being the top hairstylist, most sought after already within such a short period of time. So you can manifest, create whatever it is you want to create, because you're not afraid of doing this work in Houston or in California or here, because you are carrying yourself with you. And that confidence is one end of it. The other is the discomfort of jumping into the darkness, not knowing where you're going and what you're going to experience. And I think you're speaking to the fact that if you look at it with wonder and curiosity, your life that's about to unfold, it's amazing that you can actually feel good, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's nothing more empowering than taking that leap of faith
Yeah.
and having a healthy conversation with yourself. And that's where the most important thing that I think you could do is have a healthy conversation with yourself and not stop yourself by having unhealthy conversations. Because it's a lot easier to talk yourself out of something that you're not familiar with or uncomfortable with. It's so easy, and that's where I
Mhm.
think most people fall short is you know having that negative talk back with themselves instead of the encouragement. Alex, you can do this. You're great. You've done this before. You know what to do. That those conversations are healthy instead of you don't know what's over there. You don't know the people. You've never driven that road before. Have you lost your mind? Your life is so comfortable. You got everything you make so much money or whatever the conversation is. All those conversations
Yes.
will stop from growing. You get comfortable. That
Hmm.
that's what
Man,
can stop you from growing.
absolutely.
So you
Wow. So
you
being
you got
comfortable is a good indication that you need to grow.
oh, for
Yeah.
sure. You know,
Amazing.
there be
Yeah.
comfortable maybe one day out of the week, and then be uncomfortable the next the 6 days, and that's where the growth is, right? That's, that's the dimension of growth and development.
Hmm.
Very important.
Awesome. So you and I talked about dimensions. Can you touch on the dimensions that we talked about the other day?
Well,
One, two, 3D. I know that I don't want to miss
yeah.
that.
Well, a lot of times people always ask me like how is it that you can connect to so many people. Now a lot of that of course is repetition and practice because I see people all day long and that's what I do. I'm almost like a professional speaker and listener because when I was doing 19 people a day and with a great track record of making them happy. um, People come, they share with you, you touch them and the barriers drop. So they share with you probably more than most people would share with anyone because that's what you do with your stylist is you talk. And
Mhm.
we all have different life experiences and I I have a unique way of connecting and talking to people so that they understand the complexity of some of the conversations that we have. So I
Mhm.
always use this as an example, like when people say, "Well, what should I tell my kids?" Because my kids aren't listening to me, and I tell them because you're coming from a place of where you have these different scales of experience, and your experience is so high, and they come from a low experience that they don't see and can't understand where you're coming from. So it's
Mm.
like the 1D, 2D, 3D, 4D. It's the same thing. So if you know how the dimensions work, first D is just a dot, right? Two dimensional is a
Mhm.
photograph. 3D is the world that we live in where it's three dimensional. And then you got 4D and 5D, whatever else. Now we can't see that. And the rules are if
Yeah.
you're a 3D creature, you can't see beyond the 4D, but you can see 2D and 1D. If you're a fourth degree creature, you can see 3D, and all the way down, but you can't see 5D. And I always say explaining things
Mm.
works the same way. So if you want someone to understand where you're coming from, you have to go down to their level of understanding. And parents don't do that. Most people aren't really good at that. They just say, don't do it this because I done this and I know this. That doesn't really give them the information that they need to where they, can correlate the information. You really do have to step down to where they are and not come from a place of experience, as odd as that sounds, because no one will ever understand where you're coming from if you can't go down to their level.
That's so true. My God. Amazing insight. Thank you, Alex, for that.
Absolutely.
I was also reflecting that, you can't, I mean, people have lots of difficulties. For instance, I've spoken with entrepreneurs here in this area, and they say, well, you don't understand. There's no, in our brick and mortar business, for example, there's not enough help available. So, what would you possibly help me with, unless you can help me with recruiting people who will stay with me? I mean, what do people like that who are in this environment, and you can't these days ignore the unusual environment that we're living in. There's always uncertainty, so there is, but there is a great more of that, for these business people. So, what advice would you give someone who is a business owner, a leader like that, and navigating these unusual circumstances of today?
All right. Well, a lot of times people come up with this negative stuff, right? Again, that's more of a negative connotation. You have to understand, and I don't mean the yin and the yang and all that stuff, but there are two sides no matter which way you slice the bread. I think
Mhm.
what young entrepreneurs do, or even new entrepreneurs do, is they only look at the dark side. There's a good side to everything. So there is a positive, and that's what you need to find and search for. People are drawn to that. People are drawn to positive people, and if you stay in that narrative that I can't find people, or the timing's bad, well, that's exactly what's going to happen. There's an abundance of people that aren't working. There's an abundance of opportunity. There's abundance of money. And you have to think the positive, not the negative, because it's the positive, again, that attracts that energy. And, people just love that. I'd always say, I was always very, very positive, and that's what attracts the clients to me. It's not necessarily always the talent,
Mm.
but then it's, a little bit of the talent, but mostly it's the way I make them feel when they leave. And it's all positive.
Beautiful. Right. So, a lot of people have said, oh, positive thinking, all this stuff is great, but not real. The truth is, you're coming with that mindset to a totally new place, and you, Alex, have
Wow.
shown to yourself, and then the world sees it, that you still elevate yourself and ascend to the top no matter what, because you're bringing the essence of who you are, uh, to
Well,
wherever you
Raju,
go. And I think that's, to me, as I'm listening, and I'm just saying,
I
wow,
was
that
going to
is the
say,
lesson to me. It doesn't matter what you do.
yeah, well, here's the thing with
Go
the
ahead.
positive thinking, because there's a lot of people that say, oh, the power of positive thinking, or this or that, it's all hocus pocus. Science is proving that it's real. So the scientists are coming and
Mhm.
showing how it affects the human body, and how it affects your brain and the neonets. You know, how many positive thoughts it takes to neutralize a negative thought. So the science is backing it.
Mhm.
So you can be a naysayer all you want, but I think just choosing a positive outlook always outweighs a negative one, because that's where disease comes from, because it's dis-ease. You're not easy,
Yes.
there's so many things that back up that positive outlook, and always trying to find, like I said, that positive side. And people just don't practice it, and whatever you practice you get really good at.
Isn't that true of life, man? The more you practice what you focus on, you're going to get that, positive or negative. So it works both ways. So, man, listen, I could go on here. We could talk forever. I know that. Um, I have one last question before I let you go.
Okay.
But before I ask you that question, where can people reach you? I know you're not taking any new clients necessarily every time, but hey, you are in a brick and mortar business, and you're of a service business, and maybe we should talk about how you can expand, beyond brick and mortar. I know you have ideas about that. So where can they reach
Uh,
you? I know a lot of
well,
stuff is in the show notes, by the way, but we just want to let people know that you can be reached.
Yeah. Well, I'm at Salon Karma. It's in Bluffton. It's a cute little
Mhm.
town. It's awesome. I love it. Kim's the owner, and I was just blessed enough to get to meet her and work for the staff. They're very talented. It's a great salon. The neighborhood couldn't be more quaint and wonderful. And like I said, the community has just taken me in like I've lived here forever. And yeah, I'd be happy to see anybody if you want to, you know, call the salon, make an appointment, or you just want to connect. Feel free. I'm available for everybody.
Okay, so I'll put in the Instagram and whatever else you want to share with our listeners.
Great.
So so before I let you go, and again, I just want to make sure that um, go on record that Trisha and I, our podcast is very important to us because there is so much collective learning and wisdom that gets shared, and we don't want to take anything for granted. Every minute we spend with people who uplift you, and you learn a lot from each other. So learning never stops. As we know, it's a co-creative process. Not everyone knows everything, so I also know that our audience doesn't take anything for granted. So we really appreciate you being here and being present with us. So in that vein and in that context, the last question I'm going to ask you is, what might you have discovered about yourself in this conversation? I know this is your first podcast, you said, but hey, it seems like you're a pro, you're a speaker, you're motivating. So what might you have learned from this experience here today for the past 45 minutes?
Well, I think that the importance of sharing, being able to openly share even, the hard experiences that you have, it's not something I like to talk about, being picked on when I was younger, the old bullying, but there were, things have eased up a little bit, but people are people. I always say technology changes, but people seem not to for some strange reason. But I think sharing is very important, and being comfortable talking about things. I feel great. Being able to share that, and you know, I'm comfortable with it. That's what I've learned. And I'm comfortable about sharing about the hard things.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much. I know that it requires you to be vulnerable and share some of the deep, dark things, and there's always more. But that's where all the wisdom lies, right? That you have learned for yourself and your own growth, and sharing that with others who might, who knows what people have gone through and are going through in life, and even a glimmer of, this little a nugget maybe they picked up in this conversation could be so valuable to them. So Alex, we appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for being part of this
Raju,
Connections podcast.
thank you. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I hope your audience gets a lot out of it. Thank you.
No doubt. Thanks so much.